Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Marianne Cullen. I am the Associate Department Head at Georgia State University's Alpharetta Campus Library.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheeji Kathuria. I'm an instruction librarian at the same campus.
And thank you for coming today. We have done this presentation previously as a workshop for students and as a development day presentation with a slightly different version for faculty at our faculty development day. And we had originally planned to do this as a student workshop again. And then when we started talking about Open Ed Week and what we could do, I said, hey, we could do the presentation during Open Ed Week. And it turned out, we already had scheduled it during Open Ed Week. So I'm curious, if you want to, you can either unmute yourself or just answer in the chat. Like if you're from Georgia State and if you are a library employee or faculty that's not a librarian or a student, just to kind of, so we know kind of who we're talking to.
I can go first. Helen McDaniel. I'm actually not a student, but I
Okay.
am a student at KSU, and I actually work for Georgia Gwinnett College. And then when somehow this came up in my email, probably through
Okay.
KSU. I'm not sure.
Are you in the library?
No,
No.
I'm in my
Okay.
office at Georgia Gwinnett College.
Serendipity.
Great.
I just thought it
Awesome.
was a great,
Welcome.
workshop. So,
Well, thank you for being here. Awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
all right.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Shirlene Pelt, and I'm a graduate student at Georgia State.
Okay.
So I did get the alert about the training sessions, and I've attended a few of them, so I've enjoyed them.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Jim or Yolanda?
I'm Yolanda. Hi, thank you. I'm not in school this semester. I'm between semesters, but I've actually attended some of these the last semester, and I enjoyed them. I did do one earlier this year with Windows 10 from the
Okay.
library, so I enjoyed that also. It was
Okay.
very
All
helpful.
right. You're at Georgia State?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
And I'm Jim. I'm at Clayton State, and I don't remember how I got the link to this, but it looked interesting. So here I am. I'm
Okay.
looking
Well,
forward
thank
to it.
you.
I'm gonna do the listserv, maybe, huh?
Yeah.
A listserv. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. I was just saying how we had planned this presentation as a student workshop, and then we thought, oh, it'd be great to do a version of this for Open Ed Week, and it turned out we had already scheduled it during Open Ed Week. So we have a kind of a different audience than we were anticipating, and so everybody was kind of sharing where they were from and what their role is. So, oh, Jeff is working on his WebEx configuration. I don't know Jeff's title, so I'll just call him like the Grand Poobah of
Hi.
Affordable Learning Georgia.
There he is.
Oh yeah,
You can
I'm the
speak for
program.
yourself.
Oh yeah, I'm the program director of Affordable Learning Georgia. Hi everybody, happy Open Ed Week.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
hoping that we'll have some more people from USG faculty and such. We just got the word out through our newsletter too.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming, all of you. And we are recording this, so we had some more people register so we can, distribute it to those people who registered if need be. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, so let's say you're creating something for class or an OER or whatever, and my fictional thing was that I need a picture from an airplane. So I found this picture, and I need to think about, what do I need to think about when I use this picture? Um, so, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and tell you the answers. Is it protected by copyright? Does it qualify for fair use? Is there a license that allows me to use it? And am I going to give proper attribution? And obviously the answer would be yes, you are going to give proper attribution. And then if you're a student and you're trying to fulfill an assignment, you need to think about the instructor's requirements. So we're going to talk about all of these things in this presentation. So the first thing is it protected by copyright? So what is copyright? Copyright is, this is the definition, a type of intellectual property that protects original works of authorship as soon as an author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression. So I've highlighted some significant parts of this definition. One is that it's an original work, and the author fixes the work in a tangible form of expression. So that means it is set down somewhere. It's not an idea that I have, or, you know, it was set in some way. So let's go on to the next thing. So let's think about this definition and then think about these different types of things that we might want to reuse in our work and think about whether or not they fit the definition of a copyrightable thing. So you can answer in the chat or you can unmute. So what about a name? Can you copyright a name? Charlene says no. That is correct. You can't copyright a name. There are times you could trademark a name, which is a different type of intellectual property. So you can't, name your restaurant Zaxby's, for example. But just a name, no, you can't copyright a name. And I kind of already told you that you can't copyright just an idea. What about a song? Let's do it this way. What on here can you not copyright? Facts, yes. So facts and everything else is copyrightable except the government document. The United States government has actually put all of government documents in public domain. So even things that normally would be copyrighted, yes, unless they're classified or top secret. So, so government documents are not copyrighted. If they're classified or top secret, we probably won't be able to get to them. So what rights does copyright give you? So if you are the copyright holder, you have the ability to reproduce the work. You can sing your song over and over again. You can, make copies and give it to everybody you know. You can make derivative work. So if you wrote a book, you can make an audio book. You could make a slightly different version of the work. You could revise it. You can distribute it, give it to anybody you want. You can perform or publicly display it. You can assign the copyright to someone else, like a publisher. So a lot of times when, in academics, we write an article and we, publish with Elsevier or something like that, you end up giving your copyright to that publisher. And you can sometimes these days negotiate to keep your copyright, but not always. And you can give others permission to use the work. So I may be the copyright holder, but one of my faculty comes to me and says, can I use your work in my class? And I go, sure. As long as you just use it in your class, that's fine with me. So I can give permission to people to use my work or abridge the copyright in some way if I want to, as long as I'm the copyright holder. Okay. So a work, is this fact or myth? A work is not copyrighted unless it has a copyright notice or a copyright symbol. That is false, Charlene says. Yes, that is false. So as soon as the work is fixed, that means you created it. It's not just an idea, but you've actually written the book or written the poem or even a draft of the book. It is automatically copyrighted. So this is in the United States, the laws vary. So including the copyright notice is a good idea because it tells people who has the copyright and they know who to contact, and maybe the date of the copyright, but it is not necessary for it to be copyrighted. Registering the copyright with the government is optional. Also a good idea if you are publishing a book or something, to register that, I made this by this date and it's, I'm the copyright holder, but it doesn't have to be registered to be copyrighted. So does copyright last forever? No. Currently, the law is that the life of the author plus 70 years is the copyright. Now that has changed over time. Let me get to my notes. What's the date? After 1978, it's copyright life of the author plus 70 years. There's different rules for previous years that vary from time to time, and there's different rules about corporate authorship. And so I just included a link rather than going into all that kind of stuff. Thanks, Jeff. There's the link in the chat. So let's talk about public domain. So here's another picture that came up in my search for airplanes. And this one says public domain. So what is that? Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So in public domain, it is no longer protected by copyright. It may have been copyrighted before. And that means anyone can use it without having to ask permission from the person who took the picture. So the reason things that may be in public domain is either it's not eligible for copyright, like the government documents or something like that. The copyright is expired. The life of the author plus 70 years is already passed. Or the creator says it's public domain. And that could be, I just say, you know what? I'm putting it in the public domain. Have at it. It's anyone can use this. They don't have to ask me. So let's talk. Jeff has put a link to more information about public domain in the chat. So can I use it? This is, does it qualify for fair use, is another thing to consider. So let's go to the next slide. So here are the 4 issues that come up in fair use. And when we did this for faculty, they had a whole bunch of questions about fair use. When we did it for students, they didn't care at all. So we have not planned to talk extensively about fair use, but these are the things that you need to consider about fair use. So one is the purpose and character of the use. If it's for educational purposes, it's more likely to be fair use. If it's transformative, so for example, if I made a parody of something rather than actually using the actual thing, or is the intention of the use different? So if you're using a film clip not as an entertainment that it was meant to be, but now you're using it as an example for a critique, that's a different kind of use. So that would be something in favor of fair use. And is the audience limited? So if you're a student and you're simply making an assignment for class and you're only sharing it with your instructor and your class, or if you're an instructor and you're just sharing, like, showing a photo to the class, that tends to be, fair use doesn't have hard and fast rules, I should say, but that tends to be a limited audience, educational purpose. It's being used for educational purposes, it's transformative. That usually is fine. Once you start putting things on the internet, or you start displaying them to a wider audience, that's a much different thing. So let's go to the next one. It's the amount and substantiality, not the next slide, go back. The amount and substantiality of the portion used. So if you only use a small amount and only the essential amount, so you're not giving somebody, you're not giving everyone in your class a photocopy of the whole book. You're just giving them a photocopy of one page that you're going to talk about. That would be a small amount. In the past, we've had very specific guidelines. They were not legal. They were just guidelines somebody made up, like one chapter or less than 10% of the work or whatever. But that's just guidelines. They weren't really hard and fast rules. And sometimes if, the thing everybody wants to know is on that one page and you share that one page, that could still be considered not fair use. So it's really a judgment call. The next one is the nature of the work. Factual works are less likely to be, factual works are more likely to be fair use. You can't, for example, it's fair use to a scientific law or, a mathematical fact versus a creative work. Non-consumable, this would be something like a lab manual. You can't copy pages out of a lab manual and distribute them to the rest of your class because that is a consumable work. And is it published? If it's not published, it's more likely to be allowed to be reused as in terms of fair use. And the effect on the market for the original. So if it is no longer available to buy or license an original, it is much more likely to be allowed to be used. So like I said, the guidelines are kind of foggy. And you have to make a lot of judgment calls on this. So what we recommend, if you are going to use something and consider it fair use, is that you use the fair use checklist, either this one or some other one, and keep a record of it so that if somebody challenges you on it, you can say, look, I thought about all these things and I made the analysis the best I could. So yes, Jeff says that it also might be news, so that's wonky too. Yeah, so even if it's a fact and it's news, it could be not considered fair use. So so if you keep your documentation and if you're challenged, at least you can say, I did the best I could. So those are the fair use guidelines. And this comes into, since it's Open Ed Week, this comes into play also with Open Ed materials. But really, like I said, once you start publishing and redistributing copyrighted information, that could lead you to some problems there. So the next question we're going to address is there a license that allows me to reuse it? So our library resources that are electronic, most of them are licensed. We don't actually own most of them. So the articles in the databases, the films and films on demand, these are all licensed. So we've just purchased permission to share that with y'all. And the license often will say you can share it only with people inside your institution, or you could share it with visitors that come to your library, but you can't give away a password to somebody to use it at home. Those are all licenses. When you view things on Netflix or whatever, you've purchased a license to view that thing at home. You haven't purchased a license to show that Netflix film to your class. So there's more stuff about licenses that allow you to use things. Another type of license is Creative Commons. So I'm going to let Sheeji talk about Creative Commons.
Yeah, and just a little bit more about licensing. Essentially, it's just the copyright holder saying you can reuse this in the particular way that I want you to reuse it. So there's, standards to follow with that. So a popular type of license that many of you have probably heard about is Creative Commons. And essentially, Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that's attempting to give free, simple, and standardization to how copyright permissions can be used for creative and academic works. And to ensure proper attribution and allow others to copy, distribute, and make use of those works. So oftentimes you'll see CC attributed if you're looking at things from Creative Commons. So they have a lot of different, they have 6 different kinds of licenses, and I'm not going to go into like super detail about the specifics of every single license, but essentially the more letters there are, the less permissive it can be. So CC BY is, essentially just use it, just give credit to the original creator. And then there's additions made for whether or not you can make derivative works from it, whether or not you can share alike. So distributing the work under a license that's identical to the one that you are taking it from, and or if you can use it in a non-commercial setting and those kinds of things. So CC BY is probably the most permissive, and then when you get into the CC BY NC and D, that's essentially telling reusers to copy and distribute the material in unadapted form only for non-commercial purposes only, as long as attribution is given to the creator. So you can kind of add different facets to your work, how you want it to be reused. So the last portion of can I use it is, am I going to give it proper attribution? So it's important to always give attribution to the original creator in a way they want to be attributed when you're using images or media from the web. There's no specific guidance on providing attribution like citation, which I'll talk a little bit about, but it does open the discussion about how to appropriately give credit either through citation or attribution. So we have a little table. I'm not going to go into full detail, but there are some differences when you think about citation versus attribution. So citation is kind of reusing a work or ideas within a work for academic purposes, whereas attribution is your legal right to use or distribute those works. With citation, you actually can paraphrase from the work and kind of change what you're taking from it. Whereas in attribution, the author is given advance permission to change the work. There also are formalized rules with citation. So there's APA, Chicago, MLA. There's very formalized ways that you provide citation from a work, whereas attribution statement styles are still kind of emerging and are still kind of defining their own best practices. Marianne often talks about, if you think about the difference of the two ways, which I like this example, is that the book Frankenstein is in the public domain. So the copyright is expired. You could print it and sell copies of it, and that's kind of your legal attribution right to that. Whereas if you're using the ideas from Frankenstein, then you would cite the work still because the ideas are not open for distribution, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I make sense of it in my head. So we have some examples of what a citation looks like. Obviously, again, this workshop was kind of designed for students. So we're talking about, for students, when you give a citation, this is the appropriate way you would do that. Let's say you were taking the image and citing it in MLA format. But like I said earlier, attribution best practices are still kind of emerging, and this is essentially what an ideal attribution might include. You don't have to include it, but that's what a best practice for providing attribution would be. So back to what Marianne was initially talking about in the beginning, can I use it? You can use it, but you should provide attribution and the license that allows you to reuse it in a particular way. I don't know if you want to talk more about this, Marianne.
Just that this is the attribution that was recommended for this particular image. I left it off the first one just because it was an example, but this is the way it should be attributed. So it's a little bit different in print or on a source where you can link out, because on print you have to you have to put the URL because people can't just click on it to get to it. So do you want me to talk now?
Yes.
Yeah, back to the Frankenstein example. One of the things that Sheeji and I've run into when as we were working with people is that sometimes they think if something has a Creative Commons license, it's just free to use, and just they don't feel a need to put that attribution in there, and that's that still looks like you're claiming the work to be your own. So it's important to give that attribution to avoid plagiarism and to avoid copyright infringement. So, but even if something is in the public domain, you don't want to in any way imply that you created it if you didn't. So it's a good idea to keep keep those things clear to the users. So here are some of the sources that we have found to create, to find these images that you can use for class assignments, or if you're teaching, that you could use more widely than just in the classroom. So one of them is the Creative Commons search. The Creative Commons search includes Flickr. If you go straight to Flickr, there's also limiters that you can choose that you want Creative Commons images. Another is Google Images. They have gotten a lot better just in the last few months in terms of making sure that the images actually are openly licensed, but it's always good to double check. And another is Wikimedia Commons, which is good for educational images. So if you want like a beaker or a picture of an author or something, a lot of times Wikimedia Commons is a good place to find those. So one of the things is, like, here's an example from Wikimedia Commons where I've looked for a Japanese garden, and usually the attribution is right when you click on a picture, like over on the left is the search results, but on the right hand side is where I've chosen one of these pictures, and the attribution is usually right below the description of the picture along with the Creative Commons licensing. But what if it's in a foreign language? So if you want to go to the next slide. If you click on that, it will open some suggested attribution in English and show you how to cite it. So, or attribute it, to be more careful. So if you're using Google Images, what you need to do is go to Tools. After you've clicked on the images, go to Tools, and then under Usage Rights, you can click Creative Commons licenses. And like I said, this has gotten a whole lot better. You'll see the second picture says royalty free. Royalty free is not always Creative Commons licensed. A lot of times you have to pay a fee to be able to use it, but they just don't make you pay per use. So the royalty free is not actually the same as openly licensed. Some other things that our students use in their projects is video and music, especially if they're making video assignments. So on YouTube, we'll show you how to get the Creative Commons filter. Vimeo is a little bit more difficult to limit down, but there is a Creative Commons search in Vimeo. And then again, Wikimedia Commons has video and music. There's also a Free Music Archive, which is a good source for music. The search is not the best, but it's there. Let's go to the next one. So on YouTube, what you do is after you do your search, you'll see filters under your search box. And then if you click on filters, it opens up this menu, and it's under features, and you can choose Creative Commons. They don't have different types of licenses to choose from in YouTube. It's basically CC BY or nothing. And so you need to check in the description of the video to see if the person who posts the YouTube video has made any other stipulations in their description. So for example, here's one, again, using my airplane example. So this one, when I opened up the description of the video, it says Creative Commons attribution reuse allowed. One of the difficult things about YouTube is reusing them. I mean, you can Creative Commons license it all you want, but if you can't make a copy of it, how are you going to, change it up or use a clip or whatever? And there's actually a downloader that is actually Sheeji's husband recommended to us. That's a Firefox downloader, and you can download the videos that way. And if you have editing software, you can edit it that way. In Wikimedia Commons, the default search is images, but you can also choose sounds and video in Wikimedia Commons. So here, for example, is a video, and it works the same way as the pictures. You choose the video limiter to change it from images, and then when you click on the one you want, it opens up the box and tells you what the license is. And when you click on more details, it will tell you how to cite it or how to attribute it. I'm messing things up myself. And then download it, you can choose the size. So one of the things that many students don't realize is that they are the copyright holder of their own work. So, you know, your instructors cannot post your work or distribute it without your permission. So you already are the copyright holder. So if you want to distribute your work beyond your instructor, one way to do that is with a Creative Commons license. I mean, obviously you can post your own work on social media or your web page or whatever you want, but it is supposed to have full copyright privileges unless you change that. It is a problem on the internet where, you know, this came to my attention from an art teacher that said, you know, her students would put their work on the internet, people would just steal it, and they felt like there was no recourse for that. And I said, well, what if they licensed the work? Now, they don't have to choose a Creative Commons license, but I said, you know, sometimes I run into images on the internet that I want to reuse, but I don't have any idea who to contact. But if you specify who the copyright holder is or give it a Creative Commons license, at least you're communicating with people whether or not it's okay with them for them to use it and who to contact. So if you want to Creative Commons license your work, the first thing to do is choose a license. And Creative Commons actually has a license choosing tool. Let's go to the next one. And then once you choose your license, you need to communicate your license in your statement. So, you know, you can say, you know, this is for a textbook that we were doing. So unless otherwise noted, because some of the things that we reused had a different license, all content on this guide is licensed. Oh, we misspelled that. Is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. And we linked to the license. So if people wanted to know more about the license, they could click on it and read about it. And then communicate your license in the work. So when you are, so for example, with a video, I mean, what I just showed you was more of a print thing, but in a video under YouTube, you can choose what the license is as you upload it. So just to kind of go over some of the best practices, always respect copyright and licensing. Keep a record of where you found the material you're reusing, even if it's just to say they don't require attribution. So for example, this little image over on the side is just Microsoft Office clip art, and they don't require any kind of attribution or anything if you want to reuse that in PowerPoint. But let's say, for example, I was originally using this presentation for a workshop limited to Georgia State students, and suddenly now we're doing it for a much wider audience. So then it's kind of like, oh, it's it might not be okay then, you know. But because could make a note to myself, maybe just even in the notes of the PowerPoint saying this was Microsoft clip art, then I don't have to worry like, where in the world did I get that image? Can I reuse it? So just keep notes to yourself, like where you got things from, even if they don't need attribution. If it's fair use, record the rationale. Say, you know, this image is copyrighted. I'm using it because it's only a class. And, you know, and that way I know if I decide, you know, the class thought this was so great, I'm going to present it at a Carteret webinar or something, or, you know, to a wider audience. I'll go, okay, I'm going to have to change that image or get permission to use it or something. And then include your own contact information on your own work in case people want to ask permission to reuse it.
And I just want to add one thing
Mhm,
to what you were saying about keeping the record.
mhm.
We recently discovered that Zotero allows you to keep track of licensing. So if any of you use like a citation management tool like Zotero, there's actually a field in there. So if you're gathering images, different clips in like one citation management place, they have a field to allow you to keep track of the licensing. Just something worth noting.
Yes, and it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
We're trying real hard to use Zotero to give attribution or to, and
Make an attribution statement
make an
somehow from it.
attribution statement, and it didn't work. I have heard that you can put it, what did we say it could be used in, like other or something?
Yeah, like you could put it in a different field, but at least it's good for personal use. If you're
Yeah,
keeping a record, it would be in one place to keep it in that license field in Zotero. And I'm not sure if EndNote and other programs like that help you keep track the same way, but Zotero definitely does.
yeah. So there was a lot of discussion in the Zotero forums about people wanting that, but so far we couldn't find that anyone had incorporated it and into Zotero.
That was essentially all we were going to talk about. We were going to plug our future workshops, which may or may not be relevant to our audience today.
If you want to see more of our workshops, that's where they are.
And we also often give extra credit. Students are here for extra credit for classes, so we have a certificate that you can show your professor if need be. But again, we don't have a lot of Georgia State undergraduate students here today, so may not be relevant, but I can provide that link in the chat in a second. And that was essentially all we were going to talk about today. Are there
Yes.
any questions? I'm sorry, I haven't been watching the chat, so
Jeff has been posting lots and lots of good links. Jeff, can we copy that and include that in our recording?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna copy it
Yeah,
before.
I'm just sharing some of these just because they were on the slide and
Mhm.
the links weren't clickable, but also a couple just in case you wanted to dive in. So for example, the Cornell LibGuide, if you just learned about public domain, that one might scare you away. But if you want to know a whole bunch about like weird, different new situations in public domain, you can go there. So yeah, they can be
Okay.
helpful.
Okay.
And it's great to meet you, Sheeji. That was really awesome.
okay, so nice to meet you. I've seen your name a lot in things. We haven't met formally, so thank
Oh
you for
yeah.
being here.
Mhm.
I'll stop sharing so I can see people.
Okay. Yeah, any questions? We ran over last time we did this, so we were kind of hurrying through and not asking for questions, and now I wish we had. But any questions?
Are any of you in situations where you're sharing images, music, videos, and have run into sticky situations?
No, but I've used images for like PowerPoint presentations and things like that, and so I'll be more mindful of if it's copyrighted or not. So,
Yeah, at the bare minimum, it's always good just to have that attribution statement of where you got it from. That's like a safe bet. It's something it's easy to forget, but important to do. Does anybody need us to share any links in the chat?
We have a LibGuide that we put
Yeah.
stuff on. I've forgotten what we called it.
Yes, I can try to find that real quick. Sorry, I'm being slow. Well, I will go ahead and stop recording.
Okay.